The Manhattan skyline still glittered when Noah Sterling pushed open the glass door of his penthouse. The scent of expensive whiskey clung to his jacket, mixed with a faint trace of Sloane's perfume, sharp, floral, and reckless. He didn't bother turning on the lights. He knew every inch of this place. But as he passed the marble kitchen island, something felt wrong. The usual hum of music was gone. The silence pressed against him. On the bed, beneath the dim reflection of the city lights, lay Ava's Tiffany wedding ring gleaming cold against the silk sheets. Next to it, an iPhone rested atop his MacBook Pro, screen glowing. Noah's hand trembled as he tapped play. Ava appeared on the screen, sitting on the edge of their baby's half-finished nursery. Her face was pale but calm, her hand resting over her belly. "Hi, Noah," she said softly. "If you're watching this, it means I finally learned to stop waiting for the man I married." Her voice was steady, heartbreak laced with grace. She thanked him for the memories, then spoke of their unborn daughter. "I hope she never learns love through fear, or silence, or pretending." A tear slid down her cheek. She took off the ring, placed it on the bed, and whispered, "This home will not teach her pain." The screen flickered, revealing a second clip, shorter, sharper. Ava's tone changed. "There's an envelope on the kitchen island. You'll want to open it before your 9 a.m. board meeting." Noah froze. His eyes darted to the counter. A thick envelope sat there beside a half-drunk glass of bourbon. He tore it open. Inside were 2 documents, a legal notice from Sullivan and Bray law firm, and a copy of a convertible note he hadn't thought about in years, one with Ava's maiden name, A. Monroe, written in bold. The clause at the bottom glared back at him. In the event of reputational damage caused by the CEO, the investor's equity converts immediately. Noah's breath quickened. His phone buzzed Sloane. The message read, "You alive? Last night was insane. Can't wait to see you again before sunrise." He dropped the phone. Sweat gathered at his temples as the city lights bled through the glass wall. Somewhere below, New York was waking up. Somewhere above, his empire was beginning to crumble. He replayed Ava's video one more time, hoping for a sign she might come back. But the final frame froze on her tear-streaked smile. "Goodbye. Noah, don't look for me. Look at yourself." He stood there, ring in one hand, the letter in the other. And then the elevator dinged. Someone else was in the apartment. The door creaked open, and a woman's voice whispered, "You shouldn't have opened that envelope so soon." 6 months earlier, before everything turned into whispers and paperwork, Ava Monroe Sterling believed her marriage still had air to breathe. She and Noah had just moved into their new Park Avenue penthouse, all glass, white marble, and cold perfection. The kind of home that looked like a magazine spread but never felt lived in. She thought it was temporary, that warmth would follow once Noah's company, Sterling Quant, secured its Series C funding. Every morning, she made him coffee in their chrome kitchen while he scrolled through stock tickers on his iPad, barely looking up. He used to smile when she slid his mug toward him. Now he just nodded, distracted. The man who once read her poetry drafts now read investor decks instead. Ava wasn't naive. She'd helped him build Sterling Quant from the ground up, editing his presentations, finding his voice when he had none. But as the company's valuation soared, Noah's gratitude faded into entitlement. "You're amazing, babe," he'd say, "but you should rest now. The baby needs you calm." It sounded like care, but it was a cage disguised as kindness. At night, she lay beside him while he pretended to sleep, his phone lighting the room with messages from clients. Once, when he showered, she saw a name flash across the screen. Sloane Avery, a sleek PR consultant who'd been hovering around the office for months. Ava didn't open the message. She didn't have to. Her intuition already screamed the truth. Still, she tried to believe in him. Love, after all, wasn't supposed to vanish overnight. She planned small dinners, booked prenatal yoga, sent him sonogram photos during meetings. His replies grew shorter. Then one afternoon, she received a calendar alert. Noah had rescheduled their ultrasound for the 3rd time. "Investor dinner," he texted. "Rain check." That night, Ava sat alone at the restaurant they used to call their place, a quiet corner at the River Calf, under the Brooklyn Bridge. The Manhattan skyline shimmered across the water, and she felt the baby kick for the first time, a life reminding her it existed, even if her marriage no longer did. The waiter placed a single glass of sparkling water beside her plate. "Your husband running late?" he asked kindly. She smiled, because crying in public would make it real. "He's just busy," she whispered. Across the river, Noah laughed inside a private lounge at the Ritz-Carlton with Sloane and 2 venture partners. Sloane's hand brushed his wrist as she leaned in. "You're not the married type, Noah," she teased. He didn't correct her. When he stumbled home near midnight, reeking of cologne that wasn't hers, Ava was awake. She didn't scream. She didn't ask questions. She simply watched him collapse into bed, mumbling excuses. The next morning, she opened her notes app and started writing. Not a diary, a record. Dates, bank transfers, missed appointments, evidence of how she had quietly funded the early months of sterling quant from her inheritance. Each line was calm, factual, deliberate. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. Then came the ultrasound appointment she attended alone. As the doctor turned the screen, showing the tiny heartbeat fluttering, Ava smiled through tears. "You're strong," she whispered to her belly. "And one day, so will I be." When she got home that evening, Noah was packing for another conference in Los Angeles. He kissed her forehead like a stranger. She watched him leave, the elevator closing between them with a final metallic sigh. That was the night Ava realized marriages don't end with shouting. They end with silence, the kind that hums louder than any betrayal. And in that silence, she began planning her exit. One that would make the world remember her name. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. Sterling Quant had just closed a massive pre-funding deal, and Noah threw a lavish party at a Manhattan rooftop lounge overlooking Central Park. The champagne towers shimmered under golden lights, and everyone toasted to the future. Ava arrived an hour late, wearing a soft blue Dior gown that draped over her 6-month belly. She expected to see her husband beam with pride. Instead, she found him across the terrace, whispering into Sloane Avery's ear. From afar, it could have been an innocent business exchange, until Sloane's hand lingered on his chest, tracing the edge of his tie. The gesture was intimate, claiming. Cameras flashed. Ava froze, one hand unconsciously shielding her belly. Vivian Park, her college friend and now corporate attorney, noticed. She moved to stand beside Ava, whispering, "He's crossing lines you can't uncross." Ava forced a smile for the photographers, pretending she hadn't seen a thing. "Not here," she murmured. "Not tonight." She turned to the bar, ordered sparkling water, and held the glass with both hands to stop them from shaking. Across the room, Noah caught her gaze. For a moment, guilt flickered. Then arrogance replaced it. He raised his glass toward her like a toast. The room applauded. Cameras clicked. He looked like the perfect husband again. After the party, Noah told Ava he needed to wrap up with investors. She offered to wait, but he insisted she go home first. He kissed her cheek lightly, his lips cold. Ava left without another word. At midnight, Sloane led Noah into a black Mercedes S-Class waiting curbside. They disappeared into the Manhattan night, the city's pulse reflecting off glass towers. Inside the car, Sloane rested her head on his shoulder. "You deserve more than a tired wife who holds you back," she whispered. He didn't push her away. Meanwhile, Ava arrived home to an empty penthouse. The nursery light was still on, casting soft shadows on the crib she'd assembled alone. On the dresser sat a half-finished bottle of prenatal vitamins and a printed ultrasound photo labeled Baby Sterling, 24 weeks. She picked it up, staring at the tiny heartbeat frozen in grayscale. Her phone buzzed a text from Vivian. He didn't leave alone. "See." Ava's knees weakened, but she steadied herself on the counter. Tears blurred her vision, but anger burned clearer than ever. She walked to the bedroom, opened the wardrobe, and pulled out a small suitcase. Inside, she packed only essentials: her passport, a few clothes, her laptop, and the signed copy of the convertible note she'd written years ago, the one that made her not just his wife, but his silent investor. She sat at the edge of the bed, opened her MacBook, and began recording. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. "Noah, I loved you long before the money. But somewhere between your deals and your ego, you forgot I was part of this story. You took my loyalty for granted. But this is where the story changes." She closed the laptop, slipped off her wedding ring, and placed it neatly on the pillow. Then she took one last look around, the skyline glowing, the silence suffocating, and whispered to herself, "He'll never see this coming." 1. Outside, the city lights blinked like witnesses to her heartbreak. Ava zipped the suitcase, exhaled, and walked toward the door. That was the night she stopped being a wife and started becoming something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose. The clock on the kitchen wall glowed 3:17 a.m. when Ava zipped the last corner of her suitcase. The city outside her window pulsed with headlights and sirens, but inside the penthouse there was only silence. She looked around one final time, the framed wedding photo on the marble shelf, the half-empty glass of Noah's bourbon, the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. Every object felt like evidence in a crime scene of love gone wrong. She placed her Tiffany ring on the bed beside a folded letter. On the nightstand, she set her phone to record one last message. Calm, deliberate, heartbreak restrained. "Noah," she began softly, "by the time you see this, I'll be gone. You won't find me, and I don't want to be found." Her reflection flickered on the MacBook screen. "You once told me I was your compass. You just didn't realize how far you'd drifted until you lost me." The video was short, not bitter surgical. She saved the file and left the laptop open on sleep mode, knowing Noah would touch it out of habit. The folder name she chose was For Our Daughter. She carried her suitcase to the door, but before leaving, she turned toward the nursery. The mobile above the crib spun slowly in the draft from the vent. Ava stepped closer, brushed her fingertips over the tiny stuffed clouds, and whispered, "We're starting over, baby girl. Somewhere safe." Downstairs, the doorman barely looked up when she exited. "Early flight, Mrs. Sterling?" he asked politely. "Something like that," she replied. The black town car Vivian had sent waited at the curb. Its headlights sliced through the fog, illuminating her tear-streaked face as she climbed in. Vivian's voice came through the car speaker. "You okay?" Ava swallowed hard. "Ask me tomorrow." "Good. There's an apartment in the West Village. I stocked it with groceries and decaf tea. You can disappear for a few days. We'll talk after you've slept." The city blurred past her window, Fifth Avenue, the plaza, the bridges leading to freedom. She watched the skyline shrink, feeling each mile stretch between her and the woman she used to be. When the car stopped outside a narrow brownstone, Ava hesitated before stepping out. The doorman handed her a small envelope. "Miss Park said to give you this." Inside was a spare key, a MetroCard, and a simple note. "You built him. Now build yourself. V." Inside the apartment, everything was warm and quiet. Fresh sheets, lemongrass scent. A box from Amazon sat on the table with a note in Vivian's handwriting. "For the nights you can't sleep." Inside was a Kindle loaded with Women Who Run with the Wolves and the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Seek. Ava smiled faintly for the first time in weeks. She made herself tea, curled on the couch, and replayed the ultrasound video on her phone. The baby's heartbeat filled the tiny living room like music. She pressed her hand over her belly. "We're going to be fine," she whispered, though part of her didn't yet believe it. Then she opened her laptop, drafted an email to Sullivan and Bray confirming her legal representation, and attached copies of the convertible note. She clicked send. The act felt both terrifying and liberating, a quiet declaration of war disguised as self-defense. As she turned off the light, the city outside hummed. Somewhere uptown, Noah was probably stepping into their bedroom, unaware that his wife had just rewritten the ending of their story. And in that moment, Ava Monroe Sterling vanished, not as a victim, but as the calm before the storm that would shake Manhattan to its core. By the time sunlight scraped across Park Avenue, Noah Sterling was already pacing his office, jaw tight, pulse racing. The video still played in his head, the calm precision of Ava's goodbye, the soft venom of her composure. But what haunted him most wasn't her words. It was that envelope. The convertible note. Her maiden name. A. Monroe. It sat on his desk now, beside his Mont Blanc pen and a cooling espresso. He had read it 10 times, each line slicing deeper. A clause he'd forgotten, one she must have drafted years ago when the company nearly collapsed. A clause giving her equity and power if his conduct damaged the firm's reputation. It was legal dynamite, and he'd handed her the fuse himself. His phone buzzed. The notification banner read, 9 a.m. Board meeting. Conference room A. He straightened his tie, slipped the envelope into his briefcase, and walked out. The boardroom's panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline should have been calming. Instead, it looked like judgment. The partners sat in silence as Noah entered. They weren't smiling. "Morning," he said, forcing composure. "Before we begin," but Chairwoman Evelyn Shaw cut him off. "Before you begin, Noah, we need clarity." Her tone was ice in designer heels. "Several outlets received photos of you leaving the Ritz-Carlton last night. With your PR consultant." The blood drained from his face. "It's taken out of context." "Context doesn't matter to investors," Evelyn interrupted. She slid her iPad across the table. "They're calling this a liability. And then there's this." On the screen was a copy of the convertible note Ava had sent to corporate counsel. A legal trail proving she'd seeded his company years earlier. "How did you, your wife, or should I say, your investor, retain Sullivan and Bray?" "Vivian Park's firm." Evelyn leaned back. "They've been in touch with compliance since 7 a.m. Every word hit like a gavel. Noah's mind scrambled for strategy. He tried charm. "Look, this is a misunderstanding. Ava's emotional. She's pregnant, hormonal." Evelyn's eyebrow arched. "Careful, Noah. Half this board is hormonal." Laughter didn't follow. The silence returned, heavier. Another director, Alan Cho, folded his hands. "If this story breaks wider, our Series D financing could implode. Investors are allergic to scandal." Noah gritted his teeth. "I'll handle my personal life." Alan glanced at Evelyn. "The issue is, your personal life may already handle you." For a moment, Noah wanted to walk out. Instead, he reached for his Mont Blanc pen habit, control, and signed a few pending documents with unnecessary force. "Fine," he said. "Damage control. I'll release a statement by noon. Keep this internal." But even as he spoke, his assistant burst through the door, pale and shaking. "Sir," she whispered, "there's a post trending. It's Ava's video." The room froze. Noah's stomach twisted. "What?" She turned the screen toward him. The clip wasn't the full goodbye, only a 15-second snippet. Ava's tear-streaked face saying, "I finally learned to stop waiting for the man I married." The caption read, "Number Sterling goodbye." Within minutes, news sites were embedding it. Hashtags spread. Investors were texting. And Noah Sterling, the man who built his empire on confidence, suddenly felt like a boy caught stealing from his own house. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. "You'd better pray your wife stops here. Because if she doesn't, our board will." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Outside, Manhattan glowed with morning light, bright, brutal, and unforgiving. And for the first time, Noah realized the empire he'd built on charm was collapsing under the quiet, calculated wrath of the woman he thought he'd broken. The West Village apartment was quiet except for the hum of the city outside. Ava sat on the couch, blanket over her knees, eyes puffy from exhaustion. She hadn't checked the news, but she could feel the chaos brewing uptown. When the doorbell rang, she already knew who it was. Vivian Park stepped in, trench coat damp from the rain, laptop tucked under her arm. She moved with the calm efficiency of a woman who had seen too many men crumble and too many women rebuild. "You slept?" she asked. "A little," Ava lied. Vivian placed a legal pad on the table. "Good. Because from now on, you're not just a wife walking away. You're a client, a shareholder, and a witness." Ava blinked. "Witness?" Vivian nodded, setting up her MacBook. "Everything we do from this point forward must be documented. No emotion, no threats, no leaks. You play quiet and clean. He's already reacting. Let him spiral." She opened an organized folder. Inside were screenshots, wire transfers, and time-stamped emails Ava had collected over the past year. "You did half my work already," Vivian said with a small smile. "Now, we build the wall." "What wall?" "The legal kind. It protects your baby, your mental health, and your equity." "See." Ava leaned back, clutching a mug of tea. "He'll fight me, you know, Noah. He doesn't lose." Vivian's eyes hardened. "He's already losing. The media doesn't destroy men like him. It exposes them. But we're not chasing headlines. We're chasing leverage. She typed rapidly, drafting a formal letter to Sterling Quant's board. Mrs. Ava Monroe Sterling requests the company temporarily suspend any public appearances involving CEO Noah Sterling until reputational risk assessment concludes. Ava frowned. That sounds like a threat. It's not, Vivian replied. It's a mirror. Let them see what he's risking. When Ava hesitated, Vivian's tone softened. Listen, I know you didn't want war, but he declared it the night he chose deceit over decency. You're just responding with documentation. Ava's hand trembled slightly as she signed the first letter. Her initials, AMS, looked foreign to her, like someone else's signature. Afterward, Vivian closed the laptop and studied her friend. You're 6 months pregnant, Ava. Stress like this can hurt both of you. You need structure. Ava laughed bitterly. Structure? My life's ashes on Fifth Avenue. Then we build new architecture, Vivian countered, standing. She handed Ava a folder labeled Daily Rules. No direct contact with Noah. No reading comments. No watching the video. Eat 3 times a day. Walk 20 minutes. And call me before you cry. 1. Ava's eyes filled again. And if he shows up? Don't open the door. Call me. And remember, silence is your loudest weapon. That evening, while Vivian made calls from the kitchen, Ava sat by the window watching the rain slide down the glass. Her phone buzzed with Noah's name, again and again. She ignored it. Then came a message. You made this public? You'll ruin everything. Ava exhaled shakily. For the first time, she didn't respond. At midnight, Vivian returned with a stack of printed papers and an exhausted smile. It's done. The notice went to the board, the media lawyers, and the PR team. He'll know by morning he's legally bound to keep quiet. Ava whispered. And if he doesn't? Vivian poured 2 glasses of water, clinking one against Ava's. Then we show him what happens when a woman he underestimated learns the law better than he does. Outside, thunder cracked over Manhattan. Inside, Ava finally slept. And while Noah planned his next move, Ava's quiet retaliation had already begun, signed, sealed, and perfectly legal. At 8 a.m., the next morning, Sloane Avery adjusted her diamond-studded Cartier bracelet and stared at her reflection in the mirror of her Soho loft. She looked flawless, but her eyes betrayed calculation. The viral clip of Ava's goodbye had already racked up millions of views. Blogs called it the most dignified heartbreak New York ever saw. Sloane wasn't worried about Ava's pain. She was worried about her own exposure. Her phone buzzed. A text from Noah. We need to talk. Now. She smirked. Of course we do. By 9, she walked into Sterling Quant's headquarters, heels clicking against the polished marble floors. The receptionist hesitated. Miss Avery, the board's requested. I know, Sloane interrupted, flashing a perfect smile. They need a narrative. I'm here to give them one. T. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. Noah's tie hung loose, his expression cracked. The directors looked as though they'd aged a decade overnight. Damage control, Sloane announced, setting her iPad on the table. We can flip this story before noon. If we control the messaging. Ava looks emotional, not strategic. We frame it as marital stress exaggerated by social media. I can pitch it to Forbes as a piece about resilience under pressure. Noah rubbed his temples. You're not helping. I'm saving you, she corrected, voice sharp. Unless you'd rather your investors think your pregnant wife owns a controlling clause in your company. Evelyn Shaw, the board chair, shot Sloane a cutting look. Miss Avery, your name is in half the rumors. You are not the fix, you are the problem. Sloane froze. For the first time, the confidence slipped. Excuse me? Evelyn continued. HR confirmed your payments were processed under consultant, but flagged as excessive. We'll be investigating that. Effective immediately. Your access to company accounts is suspended. Sloane's heart pounded. Noah? But Noah avoided her gaze. He couldn't protect her now, not without sinking himself deeper. Sloane straightened, smile brittle. You'll regret this. When I talk, you'll all regret this. She grabbed her tablet, heels slicing through the silence as she stormed out. Outside, she opened her phone and hit record. They think they can silence me? Watch this space, she hissed into the camera. Then she hit post. By noon, Her video was trending too, only this time, the internet wasn't kind. Screenshots surfaced, private DMs between her and Noah, receipts from the Ritz, Carlton, leaked photos of them leaving the car together. Within hours, she'd gone from power player to homewrecker. At the same moment, Ava sat in the West Village apartment, sipping chamomile tea while Vivian scrolled through headlines. "You're officially America's sympathy," Vivian muttered. "But don't speak. Don't react. Let them drown each other." Ava nodded, though part of her trembled at the sheer speed of it all. Her name, her pain, her face everywhere. She wanted to disappear, but Vivian's words echoed. "Silence is your loudest weapon." That night, Noah called again, voice raw. "Ava, please, you have to stop this." "I didn't start it," she said softly. He exhaled shakily. "They're threatening to freeze my shares. I'm losing control." "Then maybe you should have thought about control before you lost your conscience." She ended the call. In his penthouse, Noah hurled his phone across the room, shattering it against the wall. Sloane's face flashed on every screen, her scandal bleeding into his empire. He poured another glass of bourbon and muttered, "It's all her fault." But deep down he knew. The person dismantling him wasn't Sloane. It was Ava without even lifting a finger. And by morning, the woman he betrayed would own more of his future than he ever imagined. 2 days later, the city was still buzzing with the fallout. Number Sterling Goodbye had mutated into Number Stand with Ava, a cultural storm that refused to die down. Morning talk shows dissected her video, podcasts praised her composure, and tabloids camped outside the Sterling Quant building hoping for tears or chaos. Ava gave them neither. She remained silent, until Vivian received a message that changed everything. It was from Julian Black, the private equity magnate Noah once humiliated publicly. The email was short. "Tell Ava I have information that could protect her and the child. Confidential. Meet me at the River Caf San PM." Vivian frowned. "He's the last man I expected to help." "Then maybe that's exactly why he should," Ava said quietly. At 3 p.m., the Brooklyn air smelled like rain and roasted coffee. The River Caf shimmered beneath the bridge, its windows reflecting the skyline like a secret. Ava arrived wearing a long beige coat, her hair tied back, every gesture measured. She looked fragile but dignified, a woman holding herself together because falling apart wasn't an option. Julian was already waiting by the corner table, a black coffee untouched before him. His Rolex caught the soft light as he stood to greet her. "Mrs. Sterling," he said politely. "Ava, please." "Jan." He nodded, motioning for her to sit. "I watched your video. Half the city did. You didn't raise your voice, and yet the whole room heard you. That's power." Ava folded her hands. "Power's a word men like to use when women finally say no." Julian smiled faintly. "Fair. But I'm not here to use it. I'm here to warn you." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were printed emails and transaction logs records showing Noah had transferred company funds to a shell account tied to Sloane Avery. "The board doesn't know about this yet. Once they do, it's criminal, not just scandal." Ava's breath caught. "You're sure?" 100%. "And when it blows up, you'll need to decide whether to bury him or let the law do it for you." Vivian, sitting beside her, frowned. "Why help her?" Julian leaned back. "Because 5 years ago, Noah lied about you, said you were a spoiled wife living off his genius. The truth? You were his investor, his editor, his voice. That lie cost me a deal, but it also showed me who the real mind was behind Sterling Quant." Ava blinked back tears she hadn't expected. "You didn't have to come forward." "I didn't," Julian admitted. "But maybe I wanted to remind a good woman that there are still honest men in this city." Ava looked at him, then really looked. His expression held no pity, just respect. For a brief moment, she felt the tightness in her chest ease. "What do you want in return?" He chuckled. "A coffee refill. And maybe a chance to see you smile again someday." For the first time in months, she did. They spent an hour mapping out contingencies. Vivian would file the documents under attorney-client privilege. Julian would act as an anonymous whistleblower. Ava would remain silent publicly. Her silence, again, would speak louder than fury. As they rose to leave, thunder rolled in the distance. Julian offered his umbrella. She hesitated, then took it. "Thank you," she said. Don't thank me yet, he replied. This storm isn't over. Outside, the rain began to fall, streaking the East River in silver. Ava stood beneath the umbrella, watching Manhattan glow across the water, her old life flickering like a dying star. And beside her, for the first time, stood a man who didn't see her as broken, he saw her as becoming. The following morning, the rain had washed the city clean, but Ava's world was anything but calm. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing, press requests, brand offers, even TV producers, asking for exclusive rights to her story. Vivian silenced the phone and muttered, "They don't care about you, Ava. They care about the show." Ava nodded absently, one hand resting over her belly. The baby kicked again, soft but insistent. "She's restless," she whispered. "You both need a break," Vivian said. "I made an appointment with Dr. Reyes. He's expecting you this afternoon." Ava's OB-GYN, Dr. Mateo Reyes, was one of the few constants in her unraveling life. His clinic on the Upper East Side smelled of citrus disinfectant and lavender. The moment Ava walked in, he greeted her with a steady warmth that made her want to cry. "How's our little fighter doing?" he asked gently as she lay back for the ultrasound. "Active," Ava said, forcing a smile. "She kicks like she's auditioning for the ballet." Dr. Reyes smiled, but his eyes flickered as he studied the monitor. "Good heartbeat, growth looks perfect. But you..." He paused, turning the screen slightly. "Your blood pressure's high, and your cortisol levels from last week are concerning." "I haven't exactly been resting," she admitted. "I saw the news," he said quietly. "I'm not here to judge, but I am here to tell you something important. Stress this constant can trigger preterm labor. You're walking a thin line, Ava." Her throat tightened. "I can't just stop living, doctor. The board is investigating Noah, the media's everywhere, and..." Dr. Reyes raised a hand. "You can't control chaos, you can only contain it. Start by cutting noise. No interviews, no online searches, no late-night strategy sessions. Your body is already fighting hard for this baby. Don't make it fight for your sanity too." Tears welled up. "It's hard to feel safe when the father of my child is the reason I'm falling apart." He placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Then make safety your rebellion. Rest is not surrender. It's strength." Ava nodded, swallowing her fear. "I'll try. Not try, commit." He scribbled something on a prescription pad and tore the sheet off. "I'm prescribing 20 minutes of sunlight every morning, no caffeine, and 1 phone-free hour before bed. Also, no meetings in person with Noah for the next 4 weeks. Let your lawyer handle it." Vivian, sitting in the corner, looked up. "You heard the man. That's doctor's orders, and lawyer approved." Ava laughed softly, though it trembled at the edges. "Fine. Doctor's orders." As they were leaving, Dr. Reyes stopped her. "One more thing. If he reaches out and you're tempted to meet, call me first." Sometimes the strongest women are the ones who pause before walking back into the fire. Later that evening, Ava returned to the West Village apartment, emotionally drained. She placed the ultrasound photo on her nightstand, beside a framed quote Vivian had gifted her. "Still, I rise." The baby kicked again, as if agreeing. Across town, Noah sat in his penthouse, staring at a stack of legal letters. Sloane had gone silent since her meltdown, and the board had initiated a financial audit. His empire was bleeding. For the first time, he wondered if Ava's silence was his punishment, if maybe, somehow, she'd learned the art of warfare he never saw coming. He picked up his phone, hovered over her number, and hesitated. In her apartment, Ava's phone buzzed once on the counter. She glanced at it, saw his name, and pressed block. And that single tap, small and final, was the first time she truly chose herself over the ghost of the man who broke her. 2 weeks later, the glass tower of Sterling Quant no longer shimmered with pride, it pulsed with tension. The investors were flying in from San Francisco for the final Series D signing, a deal worth over $80 million. Every executive was on edge. Every employee whispered. And Noah Sterling, once untouchable, now looked like a man drowning in his own reflection. He stood at the boardroom window, staring at the Manhattan skyline, as Evelyn Shaw, the chairwoman, read the latest headlines aloud. Sterling Quant, CEO, under scrutiny, amid alleged misuse of funds. The words sliced the air. Noah's knuckles whitened around his Mont Blanc pen. "This is exaggeration," he said sharply. We're still delivering results. The product is stable. The numbers are solid. Evelyn didn't look convinced. Numbers don't matter when integrity is questioned. One investor already pulled out. The rest are nervous. Noah forced a smirk. Then let me handle the narrative. I'll call Forbes. I'll do the apology tour. Alan Cho interrupted. You're not doing interviews, Noah. Your PR access is frozen. Frozen? Company policy. Conflict of interest during investigation. It hit him like a slap. They were treating him like a liability, like he was the scandal, not the CEO. You can't sideline me from my own company, he snapped. Evelyn's voice was flat. Actually, the bylaws say we can. And Ava Monroe Sterling's convertible note gives her voting rights equivalent to 5% equity. Combined with ours, you're the minority. Noah froze. He had underestimated her again. That clause he'd once dismissed as a formality was now his undoing. Meanwhile, across the city, Ava sat with Vivian and Julian Black at a quiet cafe near Central Park. Her posture was straighter now, her tone calmer. Vivian scrolled through her laptop while Julian stirred his coffee, his attention fixed on her. Sterling Quant's investors are looking for reassurance, Vivian said. They're considering new management someone steady, scandal-free, investor-friendly. Julian smirked. And conveniently, I'm part of the shortlist. Ava raised an eyebrow. You're taking over Noah's company? Not taking over, Julian corrected. Rescuing it from self-destruction. But I wouldn't move forward without your approval. She studied him carefully. Why me? Because you built the foundation he's standing on, Julian said softly. And because you deserve to decide whether that foundation gets rebuilt or burned to the ground. Ava looked down at her cup. The steam blurred her reflection. If you take control, Noah loses everything. His name, his power, his company. Julian leaned in. He already lost what mattered most. You. This is just gravity catching up. Send. Vivian slid a folder toward Ava. You don't have to say yes today, but the documents are ready. If you sign, you transfer your equity into Julian's consortium. The board will vote him in as acting CEO. Noah won't see it coming. Ava's fingers hovered over the pen. She hesitated, heart pounding. I don't want revenge, she said quietly. Vivian smiled gently. Good. Because this isn't revenge. It's correction. Ava exhaled, steady and sure, and signed her name. Hours later, inside the Sterling Quant boardroom, Noah's assistant rushed in. Sir, the board just approved an interim CEO. Noah's head snapped up. Who? The door opened. Julian Black stepped inside, calm and confident. Morning, Noah. Noah's face drained of color. You? Julian smiled faintly, effective immediately. He slid a document across the table. At the bottom, a signature gleamed in familiar handwriting. Ava Monroe Sterling. Noah's pulse thundered. Julian leaned close enough for only him to hear. You built this on her back. I'm just here to return what was hers. And at that moment, Noah finally realized Ava hadn't destroyed him. She had simply stopped protecting him. The morning Julian Black officially stepped into the CEO office of Sterling Quant, the atmosphere inside the glass tower shifted. Gone were the nervous whispers and darting eyes. In their place was quiet anticipation, fear for some, relief for others. The empire that once moved to Noah Sterling's tempo was now learning a new rhythm. Noah arrived late, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. He walked through the lobby, where he used to command glances and greetings. Now, no one met his eyes. Even the receptionist who once called him Mr. Sterling looked away, pretending to answer a call. When the elevator doors closed, his reflection stared, back-creased suit, unshaven jaw, eyes bloodshot. He barely recognized himself. On the top floor, Julian stood by the window, the Manhattan skyline burning gold behind him. You're early, Julian said evenly, not looking away from the view. Noah dropped his briefcase on the table. You have no right to be here. Julian turned, calm as ice. The board voted. Ava transferred her shares. I own controlling interest until the audit concludes. That's every right I need. She manipulated you, Noah spat. This is her revenge. Julian's gaze hardened. You still don't get it, do you? Ava didn't manipulate anyone. She documented. You handed her the evidence yourself. Noah slammed his fist on the desk. You think you can run this company? It's my name on the building. Julian stepped closer. And that name means nothing when people don't trust it. This isn't about your company anymore. It's about integrity. Something you auctioned off for a one-night high. Noah opened his mouth to respond, but the office door burst open. Evelyn Shaw entered, flanked by corporate counsel. Mr. Sterling, we've concluded the internal review. There are multiple unapproved fund transfers linked to Sloan Avery's consulting firm. She placed a folder in front of him. You'll need your own legal representation. Noah blinked. You're firing me? Evelyn's tone was measured. We're offering you a choice. Step down voluntarily, or we vote you out publicly. Silence. The walls felt too close, the air too thin. Julian crossed his arms. Do the right thing, Noah. Walk out with what dignity you have left. For a fleeting moment, the arrogance in Noah's eyes flickered into something else, fear. He snatched the resignation letter Evelyn slid toward him and scribbled his signature. The pen, his Mont Blanc, a gift from Ava on their 5th anniversary, dug into the paper so hard it nearly tore. As he handed the letter back, Evelyn gave a curt nod. Security will escort you downstairs. Noah laughed bitterly. After everything I built, I'm being escorted out like a thief? Julian didn't respond. He simply said, You stole more than money, Noah. You stole her peace. Noah froze, words caught in his throat. He grabbed his briefcase and stalked out. In the hallway, the sound of his shoes echoed too loud, too lonely. Downstairs, flashes exploded the moment he stepped outside. Cameras, reporters, microphones. The man who once commanded boardrooms was now a headline. Noah Sterling resigns amid scandal. He shoved through the crowd, ducking into a waiting car. Inside, he poured whiskey from a flask, his hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he didn't know where to go. Meanwhile, uptown, Ava watched the news in silence. Her tea had gone cold, but her eyes stayed fixed on the screen. The anchor said, Sources confirm Sterling Quant will continue operations under interim CEO Julian Black. Ball. Vivian smiled from the kitchen. That's checkmate. Ava exhaled softly. No, she whispered. It's justice. Outside, the city lights shimmered, and for the first time in months, she felt the faint hum of peace returning. Because sometimes, the loudest victory isn't won in battle, it's earned in silence. By the end of that week, Noah Sterling had vanished from the public eye. The newspapers said he was on sabbatical. The internet called it what it was, a downfall. Every major outlet ran the same split-screen image. Noah, disheveled, leaving the Sterling Quant Tower beside a radiant photo of Ava taken months earlier at a charity gala. The caption read, From power couple to public lesson. Inside a modest hotel room at the plaza, Noah sat in darkness, curtains drawn. The minibar was nearly empty. The ice bucket held melted water and half a bottle of bourbon. His phone vibrated endlessly with messages: his lawyer, his mother, his remaining allies. He ignored them all. When he finally turned on the TV, he caught a glimpse of Julian Black addressing the media. Sterling Quant remains stable, Julian said confidently. Our focus is rebuilding trust internally and publicly. Noah hurled the remote at the screen. My company, he muttered. My name. His laptop pinged an email from Ava. He froze before opening it. It wasn't an apology, nor a plea. It was a formal notice. Finalized divorce papers. Attached was a brief message in her steady handwriting. I hope someday you find peace. For both our sakes, don't contact me again. For the first time, Noah didn't feel angry. He felt hollow. He stared at her signature, bold, elegant, final. The woman he had once controlled now controlled the narrative of his life. Meanwhile, across town, Ava sat in a quiet corner of a Central Park cafe, the air smelling of espresso and spring rain. Vivian was reviewing the paperwork while Julian arrived, dressed in a charcoal suit, tie loosened, expression unreadable. It's official, Vivian said, sliding the folder across. You're legally divorced. He signed under no contest. Ava nodded slowly, her throat tightening. Then I'm free. Julian watched her for a moment. Freedom's not always peace. Sometimes it's just the silence after the storm. She looked at him, You sound like someone who's lived that. He smiled faintly. More than once. They sipped their coffee in quiet understanding. Then Julian placed a small black box on the table. Before you panic, it's not what you think. Open it. Inside was a silver keycard with her name engraved. Ava Monroe, Director of Strategy, Sterling Quant. She blinked. Julian, you helped build this company, Ava. It's time everyone knew that. Come back not as Noah's wife, but as yourself. She hesitated. Won't that look like revenge? Julian shook his head. Revenge is chaos. This is legacy. You earned it. Vivian grinned. Finally, a man with decent instincts. Ava stared at the keycard, the metal cool in her hand. For months, she'd felt powerless. But this was her chance to rewrite the story. I'll think about it, she said quietly. Take your time, Julian replied, standing. The door's open when you're ready. As he left, Vivian nudged her. You know, he's not just offering you a job, right? Ava's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. I know. But I'm not ready for anything that looks like love. Maybe not, Vivian said. But sometimes, love isn't a distraction. It's the reward for surviving. That night, Ava walked home through Central Park, her umbrella catching the soft drizzle. She paused by a bench overlooking the city skyline. The world felt different, quieter, safer. She pressed a hand to her belly and whispered, "We did it." In the distance, the lights of Sterling Quant shimmered once more, not as a reminder of loss, but as proof that even broken things can shine again. And somewhere in that glow, a new chapter was waiting, not of revenge, but of redemption, partnership, and maybe, just maybe, love. The first day Ava Monroe walked back into Sterling Quant, whispers followed her like wind. The marble lobby gleamed. Employees straightened their postures, and conversations halted mid-sentence. The woman they once pitied, the CEO's humiliated wife, was now walking in as the director of strategy, with her head high and a quiet authority that silenced the room. She wore a simple ivory dress, her hair swept into a low bun. No wedding ring, no pretense, only confidence. When she reached the elevator, a young intern hesitated before speaking. "Miss Monroe," he said nervously, "it's an honor." Ava smiled softly. "It's just Ava. And thank you." When the elevator doors closed, she took a deep breath. Her reflection stared back, older, calmer, unrecognizable from the woman who once begged for attention. The doors opened to the top floor, where Julian Black was waiting. He leaned casually against the glass wall, a faint smirk on his lips. "Welcome home." "This isn't home," she replied gently. "It's work." "Jen, work can become home if it's built right," he said. Ava raised an eyebrow. "Flattery this early in the day?" "Observation," Julian countered. "And maybe a little admiration." He handed her a sleek tablet. "I've read everything you wrote back when you were ghost editing Noah's investor decks." The voice was strong, honest, strategic. "That's the version of Sterling Quant we're rebuilding." 7. Ava scrolled through the updated reports, noting the ethical changes Julian had already made: employee benefits restored, transparency clauses added, diversity programs funded. "You're serious about integrity," she said. "I'm serious about redemption," Julian replied. "And I believe in second chances for companies and people." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither looked away. Just then, the conference room door opened. Evelyn Shaw entered, her usual sternness softened. "Good to have you back, Ava. The staff is relieved to see competence return." Ava smiled politely. "Let's hope we give them something worth believing in." The meeting began, and Ava quickly reclaimed her old rhythm. Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who'd lived through fire and learned to dance in the ashes. She dissected the company's flaws with precision, proposed realistic strategies, and offered insights that even Julian hadn't considered. Every executive in the room listened like students before a professor. When the meeting ended, Evelyn lingered. "You've grown," she said. "He underestimated you." Ava's lips curved. That was his mistake, not mine. Later, Julian walked her out to the terrace overlooking Park Avenue. The air smelled of spring rain and distant coffee. "You handled that room better than I ever could," he said. "I learned from the best," she replied, half smiling. He chuckled. "You mean me?" "No," she said, turning toward the skyline. "From being ignored by the worst." Julian studied her, admiration evident. Ava, you know, this company isn't all that needs rebuilding. She turned, eyes cautious, but curious. Julian, don't. He raised his hands in surrender. Not today. But someday, when you're ready, I'd like to show you what partnership looks like, one built on respect, not power. Ava looked at him for a long moment. You already are. My too. That night, she returned to her West Village apartment, exhaustion mixing with quiet satisfaction. The baby kicked gently as she reviewed the day's notes. She whispered, "We're doing it, sweetheart. We're rewriting the story." Across the city, Noah watched from a distance. From a hotel window, he saw the lights in the Sterling Quant Tower flicker on, knowing Ava was inside. His reflection looked small beside the skyline he once ruled. And for the first time, he realized she hadn't taken his crown, she'd built her own. 2 months later, Manhattan's social elite gathered under the chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel for the annual Women in Business and Philanthropy Gala. It was the same ballroom where Ava Monroe once stood silently behind her husband, smiling for photos while he took credit for their shared dreams. Tonight, she would walk into that same room not as Noah Sterling's wife, but as Ava Monroe, Director of Strategy at Sterling Quant, and one of the honorees of the evening. Vivian Park had spent the afternoon at Ava's apartment, half stylist, half therapist. "The point isn't to look perfect," she said while clasping a diamond pendant around Ava's neck. "It's to look like you survived." Ava smiled in the mirror. The reflection staring back was poised, glowing, and visibly pregnant, 7 months along, her silhouette soft but strong. She wore a midnight blue gown that draped elegantly, a small nod to power without arrogance. At the gala entrance, flashbulbs burst as soon as she stepped out of the car. Reporters shouted questions, desperate for a quote. "Miss Monroe, do you have a message for Noah Sterling? Are you and Julian Black a couple?" Ava simply smiled. "Tonight isn't about the past," she said. "It's about rebuilding what matters." Then she turned, offering no further soundbite, just composure. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with murmurs as people realized who she was. Conversations paused. Champagne glasses hovered mid-air. A few executives who once ignored her now rushed to greet her. "Ava, so glad you're here. You look radiant. We're huge admirers of your courage." She thanked them graciously, never smug. True dignity doesn't gloat, it simply stands. At the far end of the room, Julian Black watched her approach with a quiet smile. "You've just outshone the entire event," he murmured when she reached him. "Don't exaggerate," she teased, though her cheeks warmed. Julian handed her a flute of sparkling cider. "It's surreal, isn't it? Same hotel, different universe." Ava glanced toward the staircase, remembering another gala, the one where Noah had flaunted Sloane under everyone's nose. "Yes," she said softly. "And this time, no one's pretending." As the orchestra began playing, Vivian joined them, whispering, "Brace yourself. He's here." Ava turned sharply. At the entrance, Noah Sterling had arrived alone. No tuxedoed entourage, no Sloane Avery at his side. His once carefully curated image had faded into exhaustion. He spotted Ava immediately, his expression unreadable. Whispers rippled across the ballroom. "He came here? Doesn't he know?" Ava's heart skipped but steadied. She took Julian's arm and walked toward the stage. The MC's voice echoed through the speakers. "Our next award recognizes resilience and leadership under extraordinary adversity. Please welcome Ava Monroe." Applause thundered. Noah froze mid-step. Ava climbed the stage with grace, accepted the glass award, and spoke into the microphone. "I learned something this year," she began. "Strength doesn't mean shouting. Sometimes it's the courage to start again quietly, when no one's watching." She paused, eyes finding Noah in the crowd. "And forgiveness isn't permission to hurt again. It's simply the freedom to move forward without fear." A collective hush fell over the room. Her words weren't aimed to humiliate, but they landed like truth. When she stepped down, Noah stood by the exit, guilt etched into every line of his face. "Ava," he whispered as she passed, "I'm sorry." She looked at him, calm, unwavering. "I know," she said softly. "But sorry doesn't rebuild anything." "When?" Julian guided her toward the ballroom doors, his hand gentle at her back. You handled that like royalty, he said. Ava exhaled, her eyes glistening. No, she replied, like someone who finally knows her worth. And as she stepped into the cool Manhattan night, the flashlights behind her no longer felt like judgment, they felt like light following a woman reborn. The night of the gala ended with champagne toasts and polished smiles. But beneath the glittering surface, a quiet reckoning began. While Ava Monroe's speech echoed across social media praised as grace under fire, Noah Sterling's name slid further into scandal. By midnight, photos of him standing alone at the plaza circulated online with headlines like, "Fallen CEO faces his past," and "Ava Monroe outshines ex-husband in triumphant return." The contrast was too sharp, too poetic. The internet did the rest. Inside his suite at the Ritz-Carlton, Noah stared at the screen, scrolling through a timeline of his own humiliation. Every clip, every comment, every thread was a mirror of the man he used to be and the man he'd become. The final blow came when a notification popped up from Bloomberg Business Weekly. Exclusive, Sterling Quant to be fully acquired under Julian Black and Ava Monroe's leadership. Noah's hand trembled around his glass. She wouldn't, he whispered, but she had. At that exact hour, across town, Ava sat at her kitchen counter, barefoot, a cup of chamomile tea in her hands. Vivian was typing furiously on her laptop beside her, while Julian leaned against the counter, his tie loosened. The three of them looked exhausted but triumphant. Vivian grinned. It's official. The acquisition passed legal review. Noah's last remaining stake will be bought out by the consortium at tomorrow's closing. He'll walk away with money but no power. Bide, Julian nodded. And we'll announce the new board structure on Monday with you, Ava, as Chief Strategy Officer. Ava hesitated. Are you sure this isn't too public? The last thing I want is to look vindictive. Julian's voice was calm, deliberate. You didn't destroy him. You gave him the rope, and he hung himself with arrogance. What you did was justice. Vivian smirked. And poetic justice sells. Ava smiled faintly. Maybe so. But it still hurts. Julian's tone softened. Pain doesn't mean weakness. It means you still have a heart in a world that tried to steal it. For a moment, their eyes held something unspoken lingering in the air. Vivian caught the look and quietly excused herself. I'll leave you two to review strategy, she said with a knowing grin before disappearing into the other room. Julian chuckled. She's not subtle. Not even a little, Ava replied, laughing softly for the first time in days. He took a step closer. You've rebuilt everything they tried to take from you, Ava. But tell me something, what do you want now? Not for the company, not for appearances. For you, she looked down, tracing the rim of her mug. I want peace. I want my daughter to grow up in a world where she never has to question her worth. And maybe, she hesitated, then looked up. Maybe I want someone who sees me without the headlines. Julian's eyes warmed. Then maybe that's something I could learn to do. 1. A soft knock interrupted them. Vivian peeked out, phone in hand. Breaking news, she said. Sloane Avery just posted a confession video admitting she falsified invoices to cover Noah's fund transfers. The DA's office is investigating him for fraud. Ava froze. Fraud? Vivian nodded grimly. This isn't just scandal anymore. It's criminal. Julian's jaw tightened. He's finished. Ava took a deep breath, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. I didn't want him destroyed, just accountable. Vivian touched her shoulder gently. He made his choices, Ava. Now the universe is just balancing the scales. Ava looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline glowing against the night. Somewhere, Noah's empire was collapsing for good. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. Balance restored. And for the first time, she didn't feel anger, only closure. The kind that comes when the past finally lets go. A month later, the story that had once been a whisper in boardrooms became a full-blown courtroom headline. Former Sterling Quant CEO faces federal inquiry. The news rolled across every business channel, every talk show, every trending hashtag. Noah Sterling, the man who once hosted fundraisers at the plaza and walked red carpets with confidence, was now walking into the federal courthouse in a wrinkled gray suit, eyes sunken, jaw tight. The charges weren't minor. Fraud, misappropriation of company funds, and falsifying consulting contracts with Sloane Avery's firm. The woman who had helped him hide the money had turned state witness to save herself. Cameras flashed as Noah tried to shield his face from the glare. His empire, reputation, and privacy, all gone. From her West Village apartment, Ava watched the live coverage in silence. Her tea had gone cold, untouched. Vivian sat beside her, legal pad in hand. "You don't have to watch this," Vivian said softly. "I know," Ava murmured, "but I need to." The reporter's voice filled the room. Today's testimony confirmed that Mr. Sterling authorized payments to Miss Avery under falsified marketing budgets. Miss Avery admitted the scheme began after Mr. Sterling's wife, Ava Monroe Sterling, confronted him about misuse of her personal funds during the company's founding. Ava closed her eyes. The words hit harder than she expected. "That money was supposed to be for the nursery," she whispered. Vivian reached over, squeezing her hand. "You built an empire out of betrayal, Ava. Now it's burning itself down. Let it." At the courthouse, Noah's lawyer leaned close. "We can still settle. Plead no contest. Minimize the damage." Noah's voice cracked. "What damage is left to minimize?" He stared at the journalists through the glass doors. "They already crucified me. Even if I walk free, I'll never get back what I lost." 1. His lawyer didn't respond. Some truths didn't need words. Meanwhile, Julian Black prepared for Sterling Quant's quarterly press briefing, the first since Noah's indictment. The boardroom was packed with journalists. Cameras clicked, flashes stung. Julian adjusted his tie, calm and deliberate. "Sterling Quant's mission is integrity through innovation," he began. "We are restructuring our values, not just our systems. And that starts with transparency." Tom, when a reporter asked about Ava Monroe's role, Julian didn't hesitate. "Miss Monroe is the backbone of this company's strategy and the moral compass that guided us through chaos. Without her, there would be no Sterling Quant left to save." The clip went viral within hours. The internet crowned Ava not as the CEO's wife, but as the woman who rebuilt what he broke. Later that evening, Julian showed up at Ava's apartment. She opened the door to find him holding takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider. "You look like you could use a break," he said. Ava smiled faintly. "You read my mind." They ate quietly on the couch, watching the city lights dance on the window pane. "You know," Julian said, "Noah's trial could drag on for months. The public will keep pulling you into it. Are you ready for that?" Ava took a slow breath. "I spent years being silent while my life was rewritten without my consent. This time, I decide what the story is. And I want it to end with peace, not bitterness." Julian studied her face. "Then when the dust settles, maybe it's time you start thinking about what comes next beyond the company." Ava smiled softly. "You mean happiness?" "Exactly," Julian said, his tone almost a whisper. For the first time, the word didn't sound impossible. And as the city hummed below, Ava realized justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about earning the right to dream again. Spring melted into summer, and the trial dragged on like a storm that refused to pass. Each week brought another headline, another leak, another reminder that Noah Sterling's name had become synonymous with downfall. Sterling Quant, however, thrived under new leadership. The company's valuation rose, investor confidence returned, and in every interview, Julian Black made sure to say one thing: Ava Monroe saved this company. Ava, meanwhile, kept her head down. Her days were measured in board meetings, prenatal checkups, and late-night moments of stillness when she'd rest her hand over her belly and whisper stories to her unborn daughter. Yet peace never lasted long. One morning, Vivian arrived with a newspaper folded under her arm. "Brace yourself," she warned. On the front page, a headline screamed, "Fallen CEO breaks silence. Noah Sterling claims betrayal by wife and business partner." Ava's chest tightened as she scanned the quotes. Noah, desperate and defiant, had given an exclusive interview from his attorney's office. "I trusted the wrong people," he said. "My wife and her new lover orchestrated my removal. This was never justice, it was a coup." Vivian slammed the table. "Unbelievable. He's weaponizing sympathy now." Ava's voice was quiet but steady. "He's drowning, Viv. And drowning men pull whoever they can down with them." That afternoon, Sterling Quant's PR team scrambled. Reporters camped outside the building. Hashtags multiplied. Yet instead of issuing a statement, Ava requested a single, unedited video broadcast. No filters. No scripts, she told Julian. At sunset, she stood before the camera in a navy suit, her tone calm, her gaze unwavering. "I won't attack the father of my child," she began. "But truth doesn't disappear just because someone denies it. I did not destroy anyone's empire. I simply refused to keep lying for it. Integrity isn't betrayal." The video spread like wildfire. Millions shared it with captions like, "This is how you end a war without shouting." Even major news outlets replayed it as an example of grace under pressure. Julian found her later in the company lounge, watching the replay in silence. "You didn't defend yourself," he said. "You reminded them who you are." Ava turned to him, her expression tired but peaceful. "Fighting lies with more noise never works. I'd rather let time do the talking." Julian smiled softly. "You're the calmest storm I've ever met." She looked down, shy for once. "And you're the first person who saw me before the noise." There was a beat of silence, long charged, unspoken. Then Vivian's voice interrupted from the doorway. "Hate to ruin the moment, but the board's ecstatic. And Ava, Time magazine wants you for their Women of the Year feature." Ava blinked. "You're joking." Vivian grinned. "Do I ever?" Julian chuckled. "Well, I guess you're officially too famous for small talk." Ava rolled her eyes. "Fame is nothing. I just want this to mean something for women who stayed quiet too long." Julian stepped closer. "It already does." Later that night, Ava returned home to her apartment overlooking Central Park. The city lights shimmered like stars, and for the first time, she allowed herself to exhale fully. The baby kicked, gentle and rhythmic. She smiled through tears. "We're almost there, little one." Across town, Noah watched her video from a television in his lawyer's office. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, quietly, he whispered, "She did what I never could." His lawyer asked, "What's that?" Noah's voice cracked. "She told the truth." And somewhere between ruin and redemption, the balance finally shifted not through revenge, but through undeniable grace. Autumn crept over Manhattan in soft gold and gray, and with it came the moment Ava had both dreaded and longed for. At 38 weeks pregnant, she had grown accustomed to the rhythm of anticipation doctors' visits, soft nursery music, the hum of city traffic outside her window. Yet on a quiet Sunday morning, as sunlight filtered through the blinds, a sharp contraction tore through her calm. She gripped the edge of the counter and gasped, "It's time." Vivian, who had stayed overnight, just in case, sprang from the couch. "Okay, breathe. Hospital bags ready. Cars downstairs." Julian's already on his way. Within an hour, Ava was in a private suite at Mount Sinai Hospital, her world reduced to sterile lights, steady monitors, and the low murmur of nurses. Dr. Reyes entered, his familiar calm instantly grounding. "You did everything right," he assured her. "We're just bringing your little miracle home." Julian arrived minutes later, breathless, holding a bouquet of white tulips. He stopped short when he saw her on the bed, sweat beading her forehead, her hands clenched in determination. "You didn't have to come," she said between breaths. "Try keeping me away," he replied softly, setting the flowers on the nightstand. As the hours stretched, pain became rhythm wave after wave, Ava gripping Julian's hand, eyes locked on a single thought. She's almost here. Between contractions, her mind flickered through everything she'd survived: betrayal, humiliation, courtrooms, headlines. And now, this, the rebirth of not just her child, but herself. Dr. Reyes smiled beneath his mask. "You're almost there. One more push." And then, the sound small, fierce, undeniable. The baby's cry filled the room. Ava broke. Tears streamed down her face as the nurse placed the tiny, pink-faced girl against her chest. "Hello, my love," she whispered, voice trembling. "Welcome to the world." Julian stood beside her, awe softening every edge of his normally composed face. "She's perfect," he murmured. Ava looked up at him, exhausted but glowing. "She's free," she said. "That's what perfect feels like." Hours later, the chaos of delivery gave way to quiet. The hospital room glowed with sunset light. Vivian stopped by briefly, snapping a photo of Ava cradling her daughter. "You're officially trending again," she teased. "Number Ava and Hope is everywhere." Mo. Ava laughed weakly. "Hope?" Vivian shrugged. "Seems the internet named her for you." Ava looked down at the baby in her arms, smiled, and whispered, "Hope it is." When night fell, Julian returned with 2 cups of decaf coffee. "How's our little CEO in training?" he joked. "She runs the boardroom already," Ava said, smiling. Then she hesitated. "Julian, thank you. For showing up when no one else did. For believing I could start again, too." He met her gaze, eyes full of something deeper than gratitude. "Ava, I didn't just believe in you. I fell for you somewhere between your strength and your silence." Her breath caught. "Julian." He took her hand gently. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. You've given enough of yourself to the world. But when you're ready, I'll be here not to fix you, just to walk beside you." Ava looked at the tiny face in her arms, then back at him. "For the first time, that sounds like something I want." He smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then it's a promise." As he left, Ava lay back, watching the city lights flicker beyond the window. Hope stirred lightly against her chest, her heartbeat steady and strong. And for the first time in years, Ava Monroe felt no fear of the future, only the quiet certainty that love, when it finally came, could be both gentle and true. 3 months after baby Hope's birth, winter draped Manhattan in silver. Snow dusted the rooftops of the West Village. And Ava Monroe's apartment glowed with warmth, soft jazz, candlelight, and the rhythmic coos of her daughter in a bassinet by the window. For the first time in years, life was peaceful. No cameras, no courtrooms, no noise. Just stillness. Vivian stopped by with takeout and gossip, as always. "The world's still obsessed with you," she said, unwrapping Thai noodles. "Time named you Woman of the Year. Julian's press conference this morning. Every reporter mentioned your name like you're New York's patron saint of resilience." Ava laughed, shaking her head. "I'm just tired." "You're iconic," Vivian corrected, raising her chopsticks. "Also, don't kill me, but I think Julian's planning something. He asked for your favorite restaurant reservation, told me to make sure you weren't working Friday night." Ava blinked. "Planning what?" Vivian grinned. "You know exactly what." 2 nights later, Ava arrived at the River Cafe, the same place where she'd once cried alone, pregnant and heartbroken. Tonight, it looked different. The air shimmered with quiet, elegant, soft piano, candlelight flickering against the glass, the Brooklyn Bridge glowing above the water. Julian stood waiting at their table, dressed in a tailored black suit, a look of calm certainty in his eyes. "You're early," he said, pulling out her chair. "I was curious," she replied, smiling nervously. Dinner unfolded gently. Stories, laughter, and the occasional baby photo shone proudly from Ava's phone. Julian listened intently, not interrupting, not performing, just being. When dessert arrived, Ava noticed the waiter hesitate before setting down a silver platter. Inside the lid's reflection, she saw something sparkle. Julian exhaled, his usual composure softening. "You know, Ava, I used to think success was about control. The right numbers, the right narrative, the right armor. But then you walked in and taught me something else. Real strength doesn't need noise." Her pulse quickened. "Julian." He stood, stepping around to her side. "I watched you rise from ashes and still find room to be kind. I've seen you forgive a man who didn't deserve your grace, lead a company that once ignored you, and nurture a child who will grow up knowing what courage looks like. I don't want to rescue you, Ava. You've already saved yourself. I just want to walk beside you, wherever life takes you next." He opened the box. Inside was a simple Tiffany diamond ring, delicate but brilliant, symbolic, not extravagant. Ava froze, tears blurring the candlelight. "Julian," he smiled faintly. "No rush. You can say no. You can say not yet. But if love ever feels safe again, I want it to start here with us." The world outside disappeared. All she could see was sincerity, the kind that didn't demand, didn't compete, didn't hurt. A tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "You make me believe in quiet miracles again." He reached for her hand. Then let this be one. For a long, trembling moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded slowly, a smile breaking through her tears. Yes, she whispered. But only if Hope gets to be the flower girl. Julian laughed, relief washing over him. Deal. When? As applause rose softly from nearby tables, Ava leaned into him, heart steady, eyes shining. Outside, snow began to fall over the East River, blanketing the city that had once watched her break and now witnessed her rebirth. And in that moment, under the glow of bridges, candles, and second chances, Ava Monroe finally found the kind of love that didn't hurt to keep. A year later, Manhattan woke to the soft bloom of spring. Central Park shimmered in pale pink blossoms, and the morning air smelled of renewal like the city itself was exhaling after holding its breath too long. In a private garden behind the Plaza Hotel, where her heartbreak had once gone viral, Ava Monroe stood before a mirror in a quiet bridal suite. The ivory silk gown traced her curves with quiet elegance, her hair gathered loosely, a few strands brushing her cheeks. She looked radiant, but not because of the dress. She glowed because peace had finally found her. On the vanity beside her sat a framed photo of baby Hope, smiling with 2 new teeth, wearing a tiny flower crown for the ceremony. Vivian entered, wiping a tear. If karma had an aesthetic, this would be it, she teased. You're stunning. Ava turned, laughter mixing with nerves. I feel like my heart's finally steady. It's strange. 1. Vivian handed her a bouquet of white tulips, the same kind Julian had brought to the hospital the day Hope was born. That's not strange, she said softly. That's what healing feels like. Downstairs, guests were gathering under white canopies and twinkling lights. The skyline stretched behind the altar, glass towers glittering like blessings. Among the guests were familiar faces, employees from Sterling Quant, friends from college, and even Evelyn Shaw, who had quietly supported Ava's rise from behind the scenes. The music began. Hope toddled down the aisle first, clutching her basket of petals and scattering them with delighted squeals. The crowd melted. Then came Ava, walking slowly, every step a quiet victory over years of pain. Julian stood at the altar, tall and composed in a classic black tuxedo, eyes shining the way a man's do when gratitude outweighs pride. When Ava reached him, he took her hands gently, grounding her with a look that said, "We're home now." The officiant smiled. A love like this is rare, not born from perfection, but from resilience. Today, 2 people who have walked through fire choose to build warmth instead. Ava and Julian exchanged vows, written in their own words. I don't promise perfection, Julian said, his voice steady. But I promise to never make you small to make myself feel big. Ava's lips trembled. And I promise to love you in peace, not as a prize after a war, but as a partner who sees you fully. When they slipped the rings on simple platinum bands, elegant and unpretentious, the crowd erupted into applause. Vivian cheered loudest, tears streaming freely. As they kissed, camera flashes sparkled like stars, and Hope clapped from her grandmother's arms, giggling as if she knew this moment had healed something bigger than just her parents. Later, under the evening lights, Ava danced barefoot on the lawn, her daughter in one arm, her husband's hand in the other. The skyline shimmered around them, reflecting the kind of happiness that doesn't need witnesses but finds them anyway. Julian leaned close, whispering, A year ago, you stood in this city ready to disappear. Now you own it without trying. Ava smiled. I don't own it. I just learned how to stop letting it own me. He kissed her forehead, and for a moment, everything was still: the music, the lights, even the noise of Manhattan. Just the 3 of them, in the center of their hard-earned peace. Across town, Noah Sterling watched the wedding livestream quietly from a halfway house cafe. He looked older, humbled. When the ceremony ended, he whispered, She did it. Then, softly, Good. He turned off the screen, stood, and walked outside into the same spring air that had carried her toward freedom. And in that perfect symmetry, pain, redemption, forgiveness, the story that began with betrayal finally ended with grace. Ava Monroe didn't just survive her heartbreak. She turned it into her legacy. So, that's how the story ends. What a journey, right? If you're still here with me right now, it means something in Ava's story touched your heart. Maybe the pain, maybe the courage, or maybe that quiet moment of peace she finally found. Life has a strange way of breaking us just to rebuild us stronger. Like the Stoics said, the obstacle is the way. Every hardship you face isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to shape you. Ava's journey reminds us that healing isn't loud. It's not revenge, it's not winning, it's choosing peace when you have every reason to be bitter. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So tonight, think kind thoughts about yourself. You survived every version of pain that tried to silence you. If her story reminded you of your own strength, give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs a little light today. And subscribe so we can keep growing together, one story, one truth, one healed heart at a time. You're not alone in your journey, my friend. You're just at the chapter before peace.